And let's first discuss what is science. Then I'll come to spirituality. Let's see what science has to say and what spirituality has to say. Are they linked or are they not linked? Let's talk about it. This is a scientific age, and science, it started as different fields, no? Biology, chemistry, physics. Right from 17th century, when there was Renaissance, Enlightenment, and slowly scientists realized that biology can be reduced to chemicals. So all living organisms have cell, then cells have chemicals, and they have molecules. So you come to molecules and cells. That's called reduction. You reduce life to molecules. That's scientists came to realize that. And molecules have physics. No? When you come to biology to chemistry, that's chemicals. You have chemistry. When you come from chemicals to molecules, you have physics. No? So you reduce biology to chemistry and chemistry to physics. So science came to believe that yes, we can study outside whatever we see. We see space, we see galaxies, we see molecules, atoms. Everything can be explained by physics, no? Laws of physics. That's what we taught. But the problem was living beings. Are they beyond physical laws? No, then science came to realize, well, even living beings are molecules and they can be explained by similar laws. Are you okay? You getting me? So, physics is a queen of science now, today. Because all biological phenomena can be explained by physics, as scientists believe. All chemical phenomena can be explained by physics, as science believes today. And physics has a claim, and that's a problem. Have you heard about theory of everything? Theory of everything? Physicists and physics claims that we can understand everything through physics. Is it? So you can understand through physical laws. For example, through relativity, you can understand space, big things, galaxies. Through Newton laws, you can understand what's going on here. No? Action, reaction. Through quantum physics, you can understand what's happening within the molecules, subatomic world. So we can explain everything. If we can explain how atoms work, how molecules work, we can explain everything. We can explain biology, you can explain chemistry, pretty much. So we have theory of everything. Scientists are trying for theory of everything. They want to unify everything, and then they are saying, you come to us, we'll explain you everything. You don't need to go anywhere. We are giving you answers to everything in your life. But here is a problem. And the problem is science cannot explain 4 things that scientists know. It's not that they cannot explain. It's not that explanation will come after some time. It's not that we cannot explain now. After some time we'll be able to explain. No, that's what scientists say. Okay, we cannot explain now, but after some time we'll explain. More research, more explanation. No? But the point is, these 4 things is out of realm of science. It is impossible. Science doesn't have tools to explain these four things. They have to admit that scientific method, scientific knowledge is insufficient to explain these 4 phenomena, which I'm going to tell you now. And the first is aesthetics. You know what's aesthetics? Everybody knows, no? Love, emotions, beauty. Can science explain them? What do you say? What all of you say? What's your opinion?
No. Well, chemical reactions in the brain could technically explain.
Okay, fine. That may be one reason. Yeah, good. But you know what? One thing. Yeah, okay, fine. You can say some chemical reactions and we feel love, pleasure, feelings, no? That's what is usually said. And there are some areas in brain. For example, you have limbic system. Oh, by the way, you know who am I? So, okay. Now your question of chemicals. So you take some chemicals. So you can say there are some areas in brain you stimulate and you get love, pleasure, emotions. No, that's the usual theory. You take some drugs, euphoria. No? Is it? You feel. Drugs are chemicals. But the point is, there is a problem there, which is called heart problem. And the heart problem is, now you stimulate some areas of brain, suppose, and you get some chemicals released. And by that, it is said you experience love. But the point here is, how can you stimulate something? What is stimulation? Electrical signals? Okay, you take some drug that are chemicals. Chemicals go into your body, goes into brain, it goes into your center. Those chemicals stimulate neurons. You have neurons. And those neurons release some chemicals. Again some chemicals. You take in chemicals, some chemicals in brain. Question is, how those chemicals produce an experience of love? Experience. We should remember this word experience. Chemicals are dead, no? How something dead can produce some experience? No answer. No answer. Science doesn't have tool to understand how you can get an experience. Now you can answer, you can argue with me. You can argue that, well, there might be some center of experience in the brain, no? Is it? So we'll search some, science is advancing, we'll search some center, there has to be some center in the brain which experiences all those things. But this doesn't solve the problem. This simply shifts the problem from one part of brain to another part of brain. You understand? You suppose, for example, you take some chemicals, those chemicals goes to your limbic system. Limbic system is emotion, suppose. Goes to limbic system, and then it produces some chemicals. Now, how those chemicals are producing experience, we do not know. Okay, you theorize. Those chemicals will go to some other area where you feel experience. You understanding? And those chemicals will stimulate that area where you feel experience. But the point is, in that area, what those chemicals will do? It will release another chemicals. No? You see what's the problem? So, how does that area which experiences, so-called, it experiences by chemicals. It's all anyway chemicals, no? You don't explain this. It's simply shifting the problem away. Suppose, for example, life. Now we say life came from matter. So some people theorize, no. Life doesn't come from matter. Life came from another planet. Is it? But simply shifting the problem from one place to another place. How does life come from another planet? No. So it is said, there was a person. He was going. He had some load here. Load, heavy load on the shoulder, and he became tired. Oh, I can't lift the load. And somebody suggested to him, you do one thing. You shift the load from here to here, from this shoulder to this shoulder. But this doesn't solve the problem because still you have load on your body. So that's the point. How do you experience love, emotions? By that chemicals. That's not science doesn't have tools to explain that. It's beyond science. You get my point? You all understand? And that's the hardest problem in science. And that's a challenge to science. There are two scientists, philosophers, David Chalmers and Thomas Nagel. It's not a new thing. There's a tradition of philosophy which had been asking this question. For example, Leibniz. You know Leibniz? He's a big philosopher. He had been putting this question. This experience, how does this experience come from dead chemicals? You can understand everything about body, all chemicals, all circuits, but still will not be able to explain how from dead thing experience comes. Now you have all seen Terminator? I guess so. A Terminator movie? Maybe Genesis was that new movie. I don't know. I haven't seen movies, but so what does it has emotions? He had emotions? Yeah. You had? You really had? It's a fiction then. Latest studies in robotics. You know robotics? In Stanford University, I met one robotics PhD. I asked, what's happening in robotics? He said, well, we are not even started to mimic life. If a robot comes and he laughs, what do you think? He's experiencing something? No, we don't have a theory to explain. Science cannot explain how experience comes, how it can even make a robot which can experience something. They can mimic, but they cannot. They can laugh like this, but they don't know what's experience all about. You get my point? Aesthetics is beyond tools of science. It's beyond tool of science. That's first thing. Now, what about second thing? Ethics. What do you say about ethics? Can science explain ethics? You understand ethics? Good or bad? Ethics means good or bad. Can science explain what is good, what is bad? No. Science can make cell phones, but you should know how to use it properly or not properly. What is good, what is bad. For somebody, something is good. For somebody, something is bad. What is good, that is bad. For somebody, what is bad, that is good. Science cannot tell you. Science can give you stuff, instruments, technology. How to use it, you have to decide. Whether good or bad. Science, it's beyond purview of science. Good and bad. So, who can explain good and bad? How do you decide good and bad? By common sense, not by science, no? Is it? By rationality. Okay, this will be good for me in future. You understanding? So some things you don't need science, you need common sense. Getting my point? You don't need science. You don't ask this question, can you explain scientifically? Come on, everything cannot be scientific. It's beyond science. You need common sense for this. Some things, what common sense can do, science cannot do. You see the power of common sense? There's a power of common sense there. So, is it bad? It is good. And there are big debates on this, ethics. And finally, the conclusion of debate is, come on, we can understand what is good and bad by science. Science simply doesn't, there's a limit to science. Am I clear? All of you? Make sense? So, science is limited. The claim of science is theory of everything. We can explain everything by physics. Wrong. The question, can you give scientific evidence for this? Is it scientific? Wrong. Everything, you should not ask this question. There are limits to science. Okay, second thing. Third thing science cannot explain is mathematical propositions. Now you come to hard science. You know what is mathematical propositions? How scientists do science. Now, we went from biology to chemistry to physics, no? But there's something below physics also, mathematics. Language of science is maths, no? Is it? Language, America, you speak English. If you want to talk to scientists, you have to give mathematical analysis, no? You have to give some equations. They'll not agree. If you say, okay, this is a law, and I speak like this. Well, what's the maths behind it? So maths is the language of science. Now here's the question. Science cannot explain what is maths. Because science needs maths to explain science. You understand? If science is needing maths to explain science, then you can't use science to explain maths. Getting the point? You can't do that. For example, 1 plus 1 is 2. Is it? Now, can you devise some scientific experiment, or can you use science to show that 1 plus 1 is 2? You use 1 plus 1 to do science. You getting my point? You understanding? So mathematics is out of limit of science. Why maths is maths? Why in maths this is like this? Nobody understands. Because science cannot. So imagine this word destroy. This word is destroyed. Everything destroyed. Apocalypse. Apocalypse, you say. It's destroyed. Everything. There's nothing there. Even if there's nothing, no scientist, nothing, will 1 plus 1, 2 will be 2, or it will change? What do you say? Still, that holds good, no? 1 plus 1 is always 2, no? You see? You see? That's something always there. Science cannot explain it. And the fourth thing is, science cannot explain science. That's the fourth thing. That's by scientific methods you cannot explain science. Simple. So, what do I mean? Newton's laws. You know Newton's laws? Laws of motion, action, reaction. I push you, you go back. That's action, reaction. So, you need laws to do science. But why those laws are like that, you don't know. Why gravity attracts? God knows. You have to ask God. No. Why gravity is gravity? Why these laws are like this? Why if I push you, you go behind? Why it's like that? This is a big question. This is not, science cannot explain this because science is based on these premises. No? Is it? So these four things, it is out of purview of science. Now who can explain this? That's a question. Where's the answers? You go to philosophers. Is it? Philosophers like to talk about this. Socrates, Aristotle. Socrates was busy. If you read Socratic philosophy, most of the Socratic philosophy is about ethics, good and bad. What is friendship? Any philosopher here? Philosopher? No, I'm asking. Any of you have? Okay, fine. So you go, philosophers are discussing all these things. Philosophers, you go to philosophers to these questions. But the point is, philosophers cannot explain these questions. Why aesthetics, ethics? Even this is out of purview of philosophers. Philosophers can point out that there's a problem like this, but they cannot give explanation. You understand? They can point out that, okay, what about experience? This philosophy? Philosophy means logic. So all these problems which science cannot explain, how did we understand science cannot explain? By using logic, by using philosophy. No, I didn't do any experiment to come to this conclusion that science cannot explain these four things. Is it? It's philosophy. It's common sense, rationality. Philosophy can point out these four things, limits of science, but it cannot explain why these limits are there. You understand? Where are the answers? You come, now here's the role of spirituality. Spirituality can tell you why these things are like this. That's spirituality. How? Now, I just told you about maths and scientific laws. Spirituality says there's something eternal. Okay? That's the premise of spirituality. Something is eternal. Everything doesn't get destroyed. Science doesn't have this premise, no? Everything has destroyed. It's molecules, everything has finished. So spirituality says there's something eternal. And I just gave you example of mathematics. If everything gets destroyed, still 1 + 1 is 2. Spirituality says that this mathematics and axiomatic knowledge, that's eternal. That's always there. Because there's a belief in spirituality, there's a science of spirituality, there's something eternal and there's something temporary. You getting my point? There's something eternal, something temporary. Whatever you see, it's all temporary. But laws are eternal. And that's what precisely Plato was always saying. That's Plato's philosophy. That Platonic word, it is there. So, okay, spirituality has some answers for this. Okay, fine, eternal. If something is eternal, these laws are eternal. And you can give some explanation. Why 1 + 1 is 2? It's like that. It's eternal. It's always there. Okay, what about ethics? How can spirituality explain ethics? What is good? What is bad? Now, spirituality says, Bhagavad Gita, if you read Bhagavad Gita, it's a beautiful book. You should read all Bhagavad Gita. It's a manual of life. It's not Hindu scripture. It's not mythology. It's not superstition. It is manual of life. All these what I'm talking, it's given in Bhagavad Gita. Limits of science. It is there in Bhagavad Gita. All this discussion. 13th chapter, 14th chapter, 15th chapter. It's not about just worshipping. There is logic. So what about ethics? How do you decide good and bad? Spirituality, the knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, it says, if you want to decide good and bad, you see one thing, good and bad you decide by common sense. I just told you. But sometimes you cannot decide even by common sense, good and bad. For example, you see there are so many fights in Africa, local fights, Sudan, Nigeria, Ethiopia, they are always fighting. So what America decided, America always wants to give help. So it decided, okay, we'll give the help. They're fighting, we'll give aids. And that will solve the problem. They're fighting for food, so we'll give them food. Fighting stops. But what happened was, this is common sense. This is good thing to do. If people are hungry, they're fighting for food, give them food. But problem happened is, when they gave food aid to them, war increased. You know why? Because they were fighting, they got food, and they were fighting for food, but when they started fighting, they developed enmity. And now they get food, they get more energy, and now I'm going to kill them, definitely. So the war which this is historical, this happened, the war which could have been stopped within 1 year, it took 10 years to stop. In Sudan, this happened. So they thought it is good, but it turned out to be bad. You see, Einstein discovered that formula E is equal to mc square. E is equal to mc square. Einstein thought it's good, but they used to make atom bomb to Einstein's theory. And Einstein told that was my biggest mistake to discover this law, E is equal to mc square, and they made atom bomb. So sometimes some good and bad is beyond common sense also. But spirituality helps us to understand what is good, what is bad. Because spirituality, knowledge of Bhagavad Gita, it says that everything good, everything bad is based just on one thing. If you want to decide what is good and bad, there is one thing. That is greed, lust, and anger. That is at the base of good and bad. Get my point? Everything bad is due to greed, lust, and anger. There's something in our consciousness which leads us to bad. What is that bad? Greed, lust, and anger. That's all. So these people who were fighting, they gave them food. We gave them food, America gave them food, but it didn't help them to get rid of anger, enmity. And they're still fighting. So spirituality can provide you some tools to help you decide what is good and what is bad. By giving you philosophy, by giving you understanding that there's Kam, Krodh, Lobh. That's Bhagavad Gita. Kama, Krodha, Kamesha, Krodesha, Rajoguna Samudbhava. Mahashano, Mahapapma. All bad things come from these three things. Do you agree? And the fourth thing is, we talked about experience. Now spirituality is answer for that. Experience is not from dead chemicals. We saw that. Science cannot explain experience. Spirituality can give you answer. If there is experience, there has to be experiencer. No? You get my point? This painting, you should have a painter. This experience, you should have an experiencer. And that experiencer, that's not due to dead chemicals. So there is something which experiences the experience. And spirituality says there is soul beyond body, which experiences all these things. So this theory can explain, spirituality can give answers to all these questions. There's soul, and soul has consciousness. And that's how we experience things. Simple. It's very simple. So all your answers are given by spiritual knowledge. Simple. You explain so many things which cannot be explained by science. It's good to accept such knowledge. No? What's the problem? Prabhupada used to say, what's the problem? It says, common sense understanding. Now we can explain everything. Soul, consciousness, body. Soul is eternal. Laws are eternal. Soul experiences and through brain, but experiences is done by soul. We are soul, we are not this body. And that's what Bhagavad Gita says. Kshetragya, Kshetram, Kshetragya. The quality of soul is to experience. What is soul? It experiences. There's nothing in this world which can experience. No dead chemicals, no reactions, nothing. You have to bring concept of soul there. Otherwise, you can't answer this question. So all traditions, everybody saying soul. And that gives a meaning to a life. The meaning of life is to realize that we are soul. We are that experiencer who is experiencing things. That is a goal of life. To know we are soul, we are not this body. Which you cannot have from science. Science cannot give you a meaning to life, a goal of life. They can just simply tell you, okay. So, makes a difference now. You have to experience your soul. And once you experience reality, then you can be truly happy. If you don't experience reality, you cannot be happy, no? Suppose you forget yourself. Your name, this instant you forget yourself. This instant. But you have everything. You have car, you have phone, you have everything. Will you be happy? What do you say?
No, I'll be confused.
You will have fear, Who am I? Is it? You have everything. This instant, you're same person, everything same. Suddenly you forget yourself. You'll end up in fear. So, if you don't know your soul, if you don't know you're that experiencer, and if you think I am this, no matter what you have, you'll not be happy. And that's the cause of dissatisfaction in this country. Maybe all over the world, not this country, all over the world. People don't know who are they. They are the experiencer of the experience. They are soul, they are not this body. This is the goal of life. You should understand this. Then we can be truly happy. Other things cannot make us happy because we are not in touch with reality. You're not in touch with reality. That's what scriptures are saying all along. That's what all saints, all sages, everybody is saying. But what I just told you, some rationalistic explanation. How do you conclude that there is soul and the aim of life is to realize your soul? That's spirituality, no? Spirit soul. And then there is a method to do that. That's what we are doing. What we are doing here? Singing, dancing. But there's a big philosophy behind this, not just simply singing, dancing. We are chanting the names of God. We are chanting. And that meditation on these names helps us to realize gradually that we are soul, we are not this body. It helps us, is it? That's why we all are here. It helps us to realize that. And the more you are in touch with reality, the more happy you are, the more satisfied, the more peaceful. And you can then distribute it to all. That's good life, no? What do you say? What do you say? It's a good life. At least better than other life, You don't have any concept. So, that's Bhagavad Gita all about. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. Any questions, by the way? Let's finish. Yeah. Oh, Nick.
Yeah, even though if you're like a soul experiencing things, aren't there still things you shouldn't do?
You shouldn't do? What's the meaning of that? I just told you, how do you decide ethics? Greed, anger, lust. Whatever is based on these three, you should not do. Simple. It becomes so simple. If you come to spiritual knowledge, it's so simple to decide what is good, what is bad. You don't need big experiments for that. It's simple. That's spiritual knowledge. It simplifies things. Is it? So, it was clear to all of you? Okay. So, thank you very much for hearing. Thank you for that. Hare Krishna. So what we're going to do, we're going to chant something now. Okay, so let's